The Texas Longhorns are the odds-on favorite to win the 2025 National Championship. They're also the favorite to win the Southeast Conference. Why? Because the era of Arch Manning has begun. Long live the King of Texas. Now, Quinn Ewers was not able to get it done the last 2 years, even though he has a history of being one of the best all-time Texas quarterbacks, leading them back into prominence, back-to-back college football playoff appearances and making the semifinals. Of course, 2 years ago, the loss to Washington, a shot to win it at the game. Ball fell down to the ground. A.D. Mitchell not able to make the catch. And of course, last year, the strip sack fumble. Jack Sawyer takes it to the hizzle, and Texas falls short of getting to the national championship game. This team feels, with him under the helm, they can take that next step. The next step being getting a game further in the playoffs to the national championship game with an expectation that they can do it. C.J. Baxter got hurt before the start of last year, and a lot of people expected that to affect the ground game. Well, guess what? Travion Wisner had a very solid role, and then Jaden Blue was the type of guy that had 2 touchdowns in the semifinal game against the Buckeyes. Great coming out of the backfield, running and catching the football. They have Ryan Wingo on this team. Of course, we can talk about all of the explosive pieces, the weapons that Texas has had. Gunnar Helm getting drafted, Xavier Worthy going in the first round, A.D. Mitchell, as I talked about a little bit earlier. This squad has been loaded with guys the last couple of seasons. Of course, Matthew Golden going to Green Bay. This year, a lot of it falls on the young, talented player in Ryan Wingo for him to take that step as the lead guy for this roster. In Arch Manning, there's also Khalil Lockett, DeAndre Moore Jr., Parker Livingstone, who is an underrated redshirt freshman player that could have a lot of production. But anyway, let's get into it. The 2025 season starts off with a rematch against the team they lost to in that semifinal game at the shoe against the Ohio State Buckeyes. I've got Texas winning this game 24-20, and I'll let you know why. Because it's not at night. If this were a night game, letting the shoe get rocking, just as it was against Tennessee, honestly, that would change things a little bit. Not to say that the environment's not going to be electric, crazy, over 100,000 people. It'll be all that, but it's not the same. They have to shut down Jeremiah Smith, and who is more capable of doing it than Texas, allowing just 1 reception and 3 yards to Jeremiah in that matchup? They're solely going to focus on stopping him. In that semifinal game, of course, you saw a little bit more production from Carnell Tate, and he's going to be that number 2 wide receiver. Those positions that could end up featuring a first-round pick out of Carnell Tate. But Texas being able to establish the ground game and leaning on their veteran players on defense. Anthony Hill Jr., projected top 10 pick in the middle of that defense, and can be a force when blitzing. Of course, we know Michael Taft came back. There's Malik Muhammad, and the All-American and Player of the Year as a freshman, Sean Alexander Award winner, Colin Simmons. Texas gets off to a great start. Now, their over-under is 9.5 on the season because of the fact they play a team like the Buckeyes on the road. They have a matchup at Florida later on in the season. They've got Oklahoma. It's a tough schedule. We know that. A&M to end the year, of course. Red River, as I mentioned, Oklahoma with John Mateer now looks pretty tricky. And then at Georgia, that makes sense for them to have 9.5, but I do have them on the over. You're just going to have to watch the entire video to see just how over we have Texas. The second and third, fourth games of the year are just this breather. If you could beat Ohio State, you're going to be 4-0 heading into the swamp to play at Florida in a raucous environment. San Jose State have them winning 53-10, blowing him out. That's a great opportunity for Arch to establish that rhythm, really get to build on the chemistry with his players, allow the defense to pin their ears back. Week 3 against UTEP, same story, have them winning 48-3. When you have these games against the teams that you pay for them to come out there and play at your home stadium, what you're looking to do is establish like that rhythm and know what you have with your offensive line. Because if they have issues early, or if you're not establishing the run, or you're not able to complete deep shots down the field when you're taking them, getting off the field on third down, converting on third, you know it's going to be a struggle in the other matchups. And why it's so big for Texas to get that win against the Buckeyes to start the year is because if you look at the last 2 years, they got a win against Michigan last year on the road, off to the races, going out to make it happen. The year before that, a win at Alabama. Of course, we know a 10-point win against Nick Saban's Crimson Tide. They went on to get to the semifinals. That's to say, a win early builds crazy confidence for your whole roster, knowing that you just beat a very good team. And if they beat the Buckeyes, they're all off to the races fully on this season. Sam Houston, week 4, have them winning 41-7. None of these games will be remotely close. Texas just has an out roster against Florida now, coming off the bye in week 6. Some people have them dropping that game against DJ Lagway. I myself have a lot of respect for DJ, and of course, Billy Napier's been a very good coach there and brought this program back, and people have been trashing on him a little bit. It's just the schedule has been so brutal, and of course it will be in the SEC, but specifically for the Florida Gators. Now, DJ Lagway, well, I want to talk about him for a second here, is, of course, yes, people are saying that he's so talented, the youngster, the big arm, the ability to move, but I'm not as high on him because of the number of turnovers and specifically completion percentage, as well as him being able to replicate it against a tough schedule. Once again, have to see it in that game against Texas before I fully hop on the DJ Lagway hype train, but I do have Texas losing to Florida in that matchup 29-26. I talked about the little bit of doubt. I talked about the positives of DJ Lagway. Now I'm telling you, I believe that they get that win against Texas. Texas falls for the first time on the season to 4-1 right before Red River. Oklahoma decided that Jackson Arnold was not at all getting it done. Of course, we remember that horrible performance on the road against Tennessee where neither team was getting anything done, and he did not have the production whatsoever. At that point, a lot of people were like, why didn't we let go of Dylan Gabriel? Like, how good he was, beat Texas the year prior in Red River, and it was splitting Oklahoma fans both ways and how they didn't push to keep him. Have John Mateer as a top 5 quarterback in college football next to the production he had at Washington State. 15 rushing touchdowns and combining for over 30 total on this season. He's very impressive physically, the arm talent, and they do have weapons at Oklahoma. But at the Cotton Bowl, that one always a classic. Texas gets the win, moves to 5-1 on the season before a road game against Kentucky. Have a win there, 30-13. Remember Deion Walker last year, who just was this big force in the middle for Kentucky. He was able to be a high draft pick in the NFL draft. A lot of people were considering him maybe even to be high upside of being a second rounder, but he's that force in the middle that they're really going to miss. And of course, Maxwell Harrison, who had the injury on the outside. Without those two players, they're filling in, of course, younger guys to come into themselves and a role, but without them, veteran ability and very talented players, an easy win for Texas to move to 6-1 on the season, and then very likely the weakest team in the SEC at Mississippi State, improving, moving to 7-1 on the season before they have a home game against Vanderbilt. Of course, Diego Pavia stays there. We know he had offers from a number of schools, and NIL valuations over $1 million, and people just were throwing some money at him. There were whispers about Tennessee. There were whispers about UCLA, other teams in the SEC. He ends up staying home in Vanderbilt, wanting to build something special. In this particular case, I see it as a mistake with Texas leaning on that run game with Wisner and Baxter. I asked somebody recently here who he thought was going to be the predominant back, big Texas fan, and he said it would be C.J. Baxter. People are sleeping on the fact that he was going to be the predominant guy in the backfield last year for Texas before, of course, that injury. I want you to know, first off, when I'm recording this video, it's a couple of weeks in advance because my current version of the present self-one you're watching is in Tanzania, and obviously there'd be complications, difficulties filming content in Africa with Wi-Fi and getting all that posted. So I scheduled these posts. If I'm mentioning players that unfortunately might have injuries and won't be playing, that is why, because this is coming out a couple of weeks before you're watching it, and I don't know any of that information yet. Continue on with the Texas season. They would be, after that Vanderbilt win, 8-1 on the year, and the bye week comes at a perfect time before They are at Georgia against the Dogs, Sanford Stadium. This is going to be possibly a top 5 matchup. There's a lot of talk about Georgia having a bit of a drop-off comparatively to last year, where people say it was a down year. They won the SEC, beat Texas twice, thrashed them around in that first matchup. Carson Beck playing horribly, and it's still, a 15-point win for the Dogs. The tackles of Cameron Williams and Kelvin Banks, very good players. So much trouble stopping. It didn't matter who was at quarterback, Quinn or Arch. They both struggled mightily just because Jalen Walker and Michael Williams were in their face almost on every single snap. Malachi Starks roaming around in the back end. Smile Munden. We know about that Dogs defense. Starks, Munden, Walker, Michael, they're all gone, but Georgia does have players to fill into those slots. They're not going to be the same level of team, but again, Texas did lose, like the 2 aforementioned tackles that we talked about there, and this is going to be a loss, in my opinion, to Georgia. Have Texas at that point falling to 8-2 on the season. Of course, could see Texas winning the game. I have an absolute advantage of Arch at quarterback compared to Gunnar Stockton. Both of them relatively the same caliber athlete. Arch a little bit taller and a better thrower of the football in terms of velocity over the middle of the field, tight window throws, getting it outside of the numbers, and this is a great opportunity in a road matchup deeper in the season compared to seeing a team like the Buckeyes earlier. Ohio State, Florida, and Georgia all on the road. Tall tasks. Arkansas, who they play in Week 13 of the season, have that as a 29-17 win. Do not sleep on the Razorbacks last year. This was a team that had very tight games, and of course that big win against Tennessee at home where they were able to shut down Iamaliava, Squirrel White, and all those talents like Brew McCoy, Deontay Thornton on that defense for Tennessee. And Arkansas was able to contain all of it. Of course, Landon Jackson gets drafted. When you lose a player of that ability, it hurts you. Granted, they are going to be at Texas in this game, which helps a lot, but 29-17, closer than people are going to think. And then the home finale at the end of the season, win and get into the SEC championship game scenario. They beat Texas A&M at 31-21. Similar type close game against Texas A&M. Of course, I love Marcel Reed, but like the story is for a number of other schools, where does the production come from? They lost Jamar Turner, that just beast in the middle of the defense, and Nick Scourton, a terrific defensive player. A&M is going to have to replace that talent, and it is, of course, very hard to do so when they were so talented in draft picks in the NFL. Scourton going to the Carolina Panthers, and Turner going to team behind me, the Chicago Bears. Overall, Texas goes 10-2 on the season, find themselves in the SEC championship game. I'm not doing those predictions yet because it frankly wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to do so, but please let me know in the comments what you think about my 10-2 record for Texas. You're either going to be upset saying 11-1 or bust, or 9-3. It's just too tough throughout the year. Texas, Ohio State, it's a crapshoot. Week 1. Matter of factly, it could be a neutral site at Ohio State, at Texas. Doesn't matter where that game is played, but a night game at Ohio State would have been a favorable, more so, of course, for obvious reasons than it won. These two teams play again next year at Texas. Would imagine that's a night game to be on ESPN. Of course, this one to be broadcasted on Fox. Big noon kickoff. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, Jenny Taft on the sideline. So let me know what you think about all this. Please subscribe for more content coming out in the future. We are getting ready for the start of the college football season. Could not be more excited, and would love to have you join this community. We're going to be live streaming, covering just about all of the biggest matchups of the year and streaming those when they happen, like Texas, Georgia, for example. Even an Alabama, Georgia game in the season we'll be streaming. So please stay tuned for more content, and I will see you next time. Thank you.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blunder. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Blunder.
To the 40, 35, 30. Espinosa to the 20.